Hello, Kelly. Slideshow. Oh. There we go.
There. Hi, Karen.
Hello,
Earl
hello.
here. Can you?
I see you. You're on. Hello, Earl Kelly. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good.
Good. We have a few housekeeping things ahead of your talk, and then we'll bring you on. So I don't know if it's Lizbeth or Chad that will be introducing you, or Kelsey, somebody will. And then I'll bring up your slideshow.
Okay. Oh, perfect.
I think it'll be Kelsey.
Okay.
This is George speaking. Hi, Earl. Thank
Hi,
you for
George.
doing this for us. Really appreciate it.
I'm glad to do it, George. Good to see you.
Can
Good
you
to
guys
see
hear
you
me?
both.
Yes.
Is that
Hello.
Kelsey?
Yes.
Yeah, we heard you. You're going to introduce Earl, right, Kelsey?
Yes, I am.
Very good. Earl, meet Kelsey.
Hi, Earl.
Hi, Kelsey. You must be
Thanks for
here
doing
somewhere.
this.
Yeah,
We
she
can't
doesn't have
see
a
you, Kelsey.
video.
Oh, you
I
don't?
know my video. If I found that if I do my video, then my internet is kind of shaky.
Huh.
Ah,
How old is your computer?
It's not old. It's a Mac. I think I have MediaCom internet. I don't know. I just feel like it goes in and out so easily.
Yeah, well, don't risk it. You're right.
You know. Oh, your kitty.
Yeah, he heard that Earl was speaking and he wanted to hear.
I have a cat that would like to meet your cat, George.
Yeah,
They're
well-
here somewhere. They're back over here.
this is a female and she's really loving the internet. She just is here for every Zoom meeting.
Oh, for
I
goodness
love that.
sake.
She was in the shelter for 4 months
Ah,
in a cage by herself. Nobody wanted her. And look at what a beautiful cat she
Ah,
that's
turned
a
out.
beautiful cat. Very nice.
Yep. And she wasn't very friendly, but now look at her.
It's a big cat.
Yeah. She was small when we got her, but boy, she's now 16 pounds, Earl.
Oh my goodness.
I know. She's overweight.
Well,
She's
let's-
happy.
Yes, she's very happy.
Karen, this is Diane Patton.
hi. Hi, Diane.
Hi. I wanted to let you know that Jim will be attending the meeting, but he'll be coming in later. And
Right.
so he is asking if he could make an announcement about the tree watering after the speaker makes his
Yep.
presentation today.
Yeah, I
There's
just
your
got
cat,
it.
Earl.
Yes.
I just
Yes.
got his email, and that can be arranged, Diane. So we'll get him on afterwards.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
We're planning on it. Excited to hear from Jim.
Thank you.
We actually have 2 Siamese cats that are very interested in what I'm doing now.
They must have seen how.
Cats usually do that, yeah.
Earl, is it raining in Des Moines?
A little bit, showers, yes.
Yeah. We're talking about watering trees in the park, and it's really been dry in Ames.
Mhm.
But we did have 2 inches of rain, but boy, that got soaked in the ground right away, and it's dry again already.
Ah,
So are we going to be watering trees
goodness.
this week?
We're actually going to get an announcement from Jim after our speaker today to talk more about our opportunities there.
Okay, very good. Chad, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, George. Thank you. How about yourself?
Very well, thanks. Is this your first or second official meeting as our president?
I think third, maybe.
Third. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I missed
Time
last-
flies when you're having fun.
How do you like it so far?
It's great.
Is it taking a lot more time or less time than you thought it would?
No, I think it's about as expected.
Oh, Chad, I wanted to ask, since I'm not on the board any longer, what was the response to the questionnaire about when we wanted to start meeting again?
Yeah, that'll be a part of our announcements today
Okay.
too. Yep.
Okay.
And we also were able to affirm your resolution, George, so our local club.
Great. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep. I meant to follow up with you on that. So that's awesome.
Maybe you saw the trouble I got myself in.
Well, yeah, I just saw there was a little bit of an exchange there.
Yeah. All I said was it wasn't put up for a vote. And I had several board members that thought it could be brought up for a vote. And those are the ones I have been working with. And they were really disappointed that she didn't decide to put it up. But it's okay. We have a plan. We'll get it there this next year. But thank you.
Yeah, perfect.
Will you be sending that then on to District 6000?
Yeah, I can visit with you about what's the right way to communicate that, maybe.
Yeah, I would send it to our new governor
Yep.
as a resolution, and he's all in favor of it. And the more clubs that pass it, the further it'll go.
Sure.
Well, thank you for letting me know that, and thanks for getting it through.
Yeah, thank you for your efforts.
You know, Rotary International has never passed a motion supporting our efforts on fighting human trafficking and slavery worldwide. This will be a first.
Oh,
Looks like it's noon, but I think we'll give it a couple minutes. We're starting to see the number of participants increase.
It's at 39.
Yeah.
Karen, do you have everyone on mute? Karen's on mute.
I'm on mute too.
Yeah, she does.
I
Okay.
try to mute everybody except those who are in need of talking.
Okay. I'll put myself on mute.
We're up to 47 participants. Welcome, everyone. We're just waiting a few moments to see if we can get some more people who will be joining our meeting before we get started.
Chad, it's probably okay to go ahead and start. I'll keep adding people as we go.
Wonderful, thank you. I haven't seen yet, but I hope Louis is already joined. Otherwise, we'll have to have another volunteer. But welcome, everyone, and good afternoon to the July 20th Rotary Club of Ames meeting. I know that we have a guest program and guest speaker today, and so we'd like to appropriately welcome him, but also just welcome one another. I'm just going to ask for a moment here that everyone mute except for Louis, who is going to sing our welcome song.
Okay.
Louis?
Here we go. Welcome everyone to you, and we'll start on this note. For those of you that want to sing along, welcome to you from Ames Rotary, Nevada, London, or Gay Paris, from far off lands or the USA. We're glad that you are here today. Come back again whenever you're near. Join us and then we'll make it clear. Around the world you will always be welcome at Rotary.
Thank you, Louis. Always a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your talents. I have a few announcements before we get to our program today. And then if you would stick around just for a few minutes after our program as well, we'll have finish up with a couple of other announcements. One thing I want to remind everyone is that if you recall, there was an email sent out that our club donated much money in terms of meal fees that we were able to forego. So $5,250 was donated to literacy, and that enabled the Ames Public Library to purchase books for pre-K through 12th grade. And those books are being distributed. So you may not hear or see a lot about that, but those books are being distributed. And it looks like that we have enough volunteers. I checked the list today, and the next 3 Fridays, there are enough volunteers to be distributing books at the elementary schools. So thank you to all of you for providing that commitment to providing the learning and the books for many, many Ames school children. And thank you. I know I may be missing some, but I know Jeannie Rogert and her husband Rod have been involved a couple of times in distributing those books. So thank you for that. One other announcement about upcoming items. You may have seen the email, but the Boone Club is also celebrating 100 years. The Boone Club's project is moving a locomotive to sit on a display out by Highway 30. And so if you are in any way interested in looking at this process, it looks like the 22nd on Wednesday and then the 23rd on Thursday. These on 22nd, a passenger car and a coal tender will be moved out by Highway 30. And then on the 23rd, they're actually moving a locomotive. So I would invite you to, and they're inviting you to all observe from a safe distance, but that's something that you don't see every day. So we could go out there and celebrate our Rotary family in Boone as well. And many of you also saw an email from Karen. Not a tough decision. Sorry, it was a tough decision to make, but when we saw the survey responses from our membership, it was clear that right now, the majority of our membership feels that it is safer to remain virtual, and we will be continuing our meetings on Zoom through September 30th. So it's important to note that while we are on Zoom and doing meetings this way, I would encourage you all, if you see some fellow Rotarians that are not participating in our Zoom calls, or if you know of someone who just might need us to reach out, please shoot us an email. But keep everyone in your thoughts, and we'll enjoy some virtual fellowship here through September. And then Karen has also mentioned to you all that invoices were going out, I think, starting today for the quarter. So if you could promptly address those, that would be awesome. And she also reminded us of some Rotary Foundation opportunities also, so please check your email on that. And I think those were the announcements I had. I am not aware right now of any specific Rotarian in our club that needs an extra thought this morning on this afternoon on Monday. But in light of, again, the ongoing challenges and facing our country, and maybe in the name of peace and love for one another, as opposed to arguments with one another, how about if we just take a moment to lift each other up, and then we'll come back together and introduce our speaker. All right, thank you. And so at this time, we're excited. I think I'm going to ask Kelsey to unmute. Kelsey, I believe you are going to introduce our speaker today.
I am, and again, I wanted to thank George for bringing this speaker idea to us. We're excited just with the climate of where we're at right now, but I'm happy to introduce today. Our speaker is Earl Kelly. He was the CEO of Orchard Place, which is a children's mental health institute, and he was the CEO for many years. He retired there in 2004. Earl was then asked to go back as an interim at the Community Mental Health Center in Des Moines, and that was called Irely Ball Mental Health. I think I got that right, Earl. You can correct me later if I'm wrong. And that interim lasted nearly 10 years. He was appointed CEO after just a few months. He wrapped up there in 2014. And just about 5 years ago, he and a police chief and a psychiatrist started instruction at the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy on mental health and the police. So he explained it that, you know, the correctional system is kind of somewhat in charge of the mental health system and that dates back about 100 years. So he is here to talk to us about his connection with the law enforcement and mental health. So if we can please give our time to Earl Kelly, and he can take the screen.
Thank you very much, Karen. And can everyone hear me okay? Yes? Okay, good, Chad. Chad, how long do you want me to present today? Would you?
Yeah, Earl. So it's 12:11 right now. If you can, save a little bit of time for questions and have a good, we give you a good 20, 30 minutes.
Okay.
30 minutes, okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for the invitation. And I want to recognize Dr. George Belitzos. He was always one of my favorite people when I was at the agencies referred to earlier. George is a real leader in the field, and you were very fortunate in your Rotary Club and having George participate with you, and as I heard a minute ago, formally be on your board. A very great person for the entire state of Iowa and beyond. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows about George's many talents. The other thing is I have a interesting sidebar to my life experiences. Rotary was very important to me in high school, and Rotary sent me to Boise State, and I very much enjoyed that experience. It was a kind of a turning point in my life, learning more about the broader community and the state. And I originally went to high school in Newton, and we had a very active Rotary Club there. So I was a participant in there for a period of time and enjoyed it very much. And so we have a very interesting challenge before us. The title of this little presentation is, it's really been compressed into only about 26 slides. Normally, we have over 100 slides that we're presenting to the students at the Law Enforcement Academy. And let me just tell you a little bit about the Academy and put this in context. The Law Enforcement Academy is the central training institute for police officers in the state of Iowa. Des Moines, the city of Des Moines does have a police academy, but most of the people that are being trained in police work are being trained at the Law Enforcement Academy. And it's basically a 3-month type of program. So it has a heavy-duty academic focus, also a lot of physical training, and they have been based at Camp Dodge for a number of years. But about 2 years ago, there were several concerns around the physical plant at the Law Enforcement Academy. The premises was very outdated. And so they are in temporary quarters down at 50th and University in Des Moines. And they will return to the Fort Dodge or to the Camp Dodge facility as soon as the remodeling and construction is done. To get into the academy, you basically you can have a high school education or a GED, you can be of good moral character, and you can pass a psychological examination, and you have to pass certain physical requirements. And then you come into the academy and you go through this 3-month training cycle. They're currently divided into classes. So when we go back out August 12th, we're scheduled to go out then and instruct. And we have about 4 hours, and there'll be about 100+ students that will be in this training cycle. And so the director is the former chief of police at Des Moines, Judy Bradshaw, who is very competent, very knowledgeable, and really is an excellent training person for new cadets, new students in the program. So that kind of gives you a overview of the academy. And what we're going to do today is we'll walk through these slides. And you keep in mind now, these are for students in training. And so although there's a lot of basic information, it's sort of designed to help the student understand the skills that they're going to need in contacting or being in contact on service calls with the community. And there was an interesting article in the Des Moines Register today that again gives you additional background to what I'm going to be talking about. There is a significant interest in defunding the police, and we don't seem to know exactly what that means, but I think in general, it talks about developing more community mental health services to prevent the police from getting involved to the extent that they can with mental health emergencies. And in Des Moines, city of Des Moines, there were something like 202,000 service calls over the past year. And 425 of those calls involved some level of force that was used. That's about 0.2%. But as we have seen from the city of Minneapolis event, those calls, that 0.2%, can be extremely difficult in terms of management and in terms of getting the person the right kinds of services. The budget for the City of Des Moines Police Department is around 72 million. And that's that's primarily city, and about $1.5 million for federal, in terms of federal. That would be through the Department of Justice and Department of Justice technical facilities. So that gives you some idea of the budget, just talking about the City of Des Moines. There's an interest, of course, in the police department improving their the credentials for the persons coming in, but that's going to cost money. And most of the City of Des Moines money is, of course, on property taxes. So the dynamic will be, how do you increase salaries? About 85% of the budget is related, of course, to salaries and expenses. So let's step through some of these slides and discuss them. Mental Health 101, crisis strategies for mental health emergencies and de-escalation. I'm not sure, Kelsey, do you change the screen for me, or do I do that? I'll try it.
I do that. It's Karen. I'll do the slides. You just let me know when to switch.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Yeah, these are some of the myths of mental illness that you can read very quickly here. Mentally ill are retarded, weak characters, just lazy. Why aren't all persons breaking the law mentally ill? Bad judgment may not be the same as mentally ill. All mentally ill are violent, a very prevalent notion in our society. Violence is not necessarily related to mentally ill, but it is related to youth, males, and substance abuse. When you have that sort of triad, the violence potential increases significantly. Sometimes the police students will think you just go into a room and you talk to someone for a few minutes and it's one and done, and you now are enlightened somehow and you're going to get all of your problems straightened out. No, it's not a one and done. It's usually a very intense process to really resolve some of the issues that a person with mental illness is bringing. And the myths form perception, and perception drives behavior. And you can see that in the legislature this year, because they passed an initiative to do some what they call unconscious bias training. In addition to that, they passed a bill that prevents some specific chokeholds, which obviously should have been passed. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So here's a basic fundamental definition of mental health and mental illness. And you can read that very quickly, but it's, in my opinion, it's based on, can a person work productively and make a contribution to the community, can cope with normal stresses of life? If you're able to do that, and one of the other slides you're going to see is a continuum of mental health, but you're in a state of general well-being. And then the mental illness is defined as all diagnosable mental disorders characterized by alterations in thinking, mood, or behavior. And the other observation tacked onto the bottom is extremely important. Depression is the most common type of mental illness, affecting more than 25%, 26% of US adults. You know, that's an interesting observation, because when I was really starting out in the field, I thought that depression meant someone was sad and morose and really having a hard time with life, of course. But it also leads to serious acting out. People who can be very depressed, like people that we have known in our life, oftentimes can act out their behavior and not know that the behavior that they're manifesting is related to depression. And it's an important observation to consider when you're dealing with emergency mental health. This is a little continuum. So we're always on this continuum from well-being and positive state of well-being. We're dealing with the stress that in our life, occasional stress to mild distress, all the way to the other side, which can lead to depression leading or distress, stressors leading for a long period of time, protracted period of time, can lead to serious mental illness. So we're always moving back and forth on this continuum. And I think that gives the students in training some idea that we're all susceptible to various stresses in our life that we're trying to deal with, and those can lead to disabling or chronic impairment if they're not treated. And this is a little model that we put up for the students that gives them, this is still a major challenge in the field of mental health to figure this one out. Is it environmental that brings people into the world of mental illness, or is it biological? For the past few years, there's been a NAMI, for example, National Alliance of Mentally Ill, have thought that the biological side is a key factor. And so the medical providers, psychiatrists, the internists who are prescribing have really followed that approach. But I think there is a balance between this. There are some people that really have a chemistry that needs to be changed, but there are also some people that have had extreme environmental stresses. And we're going to talk more about this in the slides that were coming up. This little slide is really talks about a concept of the mind around superego and ego, conscience and the unconscious mind, and how those interface. So we get into a discussion about that. When I ask the question, what happened, we're really talking here about what happened to the mental health system. And this gives you a quick review about a very intensive process that's occurred since the 40s and the 50s, namely the deinstitutionalization movement. So for example, in the 50s, we had 4 mental health institutes with over 5,000 beds. Now, I think in the state of Iowa, we have something like 775 acute care beds in the state. And we had, in 1955, 3 prisons, 2,000 inmates. Now we have, last year, 9 prisons with around 8,000 inmates and 30,000 in community corrections. So what's happened is that many of the people that otherwise would have been in institutions have been moved into the community. And while that is a very valid point of view, the problem is the federal government, as well as the state, did not develop the community-based services with funding. And so, for example, community mental health centers in the state of Iowa, at one time there was 1 for every county. Now there's probably 25 in the entire state of Iowa. So the police are now on the front lines of the mental health system, and they are the mental health system. I would go so far as to say that. And so that means that they're getting more involved in the type of behavior that poses a great deal of problems for them, as we'll see as we go on. So the next slide. Yeah, this slide gives you again a picture of the scope of mental health. And these numbers are, I think, still in flux. We just don't know. A lot of these numbers are coming from data provided by NAMI. But the main concept here is there's a lot of untreated mental illness. There are not very many providers. If you just talk about psychiatry, there's something like 225 psychiatrists in the state of Iowa. There are probably about, of that number, about 25 are child psychiatrists. And of that in total number of 220, there are probably 40 at the University of Iowa doing brain research. So there's very few people that are on the firing lines from the standpoint of the psychiatrist providing service. There are psychologists, there are probably 1,000, 1,500 psychologists in the state. And there also are clinical social workers, which I happen to be one. And those are now that becomes the mental health provider workforce, but there's a great need for additional personnel in this area. So mental health services are limited by providers and as well by the funding. We have to remember that in Iowa, a few years ago, we moved to a managed care system. So we currently have 2 managed care providers that are in charge of the Medicaid funding for the state, and that's the public part of the mental health system, and that's a big part, very, very major part. We have one of the lowest reimbursement rates for providers, and George will probably attest to that as well. Okay, let's go on. This just talks about the childhood experiences, giving the police students a view into what can happen to children who have what's called adverse childhood experiences. And these general categories related to abuse, household dysfunction, which includes, as noted, substance abuse, imprisonment, mental illness, adult violence, parental separation, and divorce. And these factors place stress on the developing individual and impact normal development. Okay. So about 55, over half of the Iowa adults experienced in their childhood at least one ACE experience. This is coming from an extensive study that ACE has formed a nonprofit, and they are attached in Des Moines to the United Way. So this data is, I think, pretty accurate and pretty information that is significant in terms of the number of adults that have had these types of experiences. And for the other thing we put in here for the students is that the police need to understand that you can have an adult body, but you may be frozen in time compared to, you're not an adult, you're a child, and that has an arresting factor in terms of dealing with the experiences. And so the person in crisis, so law enforcement contacts often are related to symptoms of a person's mental illness because symptoms drive the behavior, like I was referring to in terms of depression. Symptoms and behavior are influenced by the illness and not by criminal intent, although the person's actions are often expressed asocially. A person in crisis, again for the police now, is not likely to thoughtfully consider options successful. This means law enforcement responds to persons in crisis and volatile situations, and oftentimes in a split second, in a split moment. Relying on convincing the person to consider options are generally not successful. And the responder, the police, need to guide the person toward a calming context to the extent possible. It's not an easy task. Okay. And so mental disorders may transform a person from thoughts into behavior, into activity. So a crisis is a perception of an event or incident unique to the person as an intolerable incident, which pushes the person to feel they do not have the resources or the ability to cope. And then without relief, the crisis will escalate. And this is when law enforcement gets called. Okay. And then the communication may be degraded when the person's ability to understand what you are saying or their ability to express their own thoughts are limited by their symptoms. When a person is unable to express their needs, they become angry and frustrated, and words and behavior escalate. And your ability to develop an alliance, now the word alliance is important here. Depends on how you say the words you speak as much as the words themselves. Aggressive speech may create more difficulty. And for police students, that's kind of a puzzle because they are taught to go in and control the situation at all costs. So here comes this instructor talking about, let's calm this down and let's de-escalate this. That's a difficult perception for the police students. And you walk into a hot event and through your 5 senses, one will have an immediate read on what's going on. And that's the perception of the event. And be mindful your read will be influenced by one perception of the incident at hand. Your goal is to have an accurate perception of what has happened or is happening. And that's another important observation because, most lay people think that the policeman going in is sort of stoic and is immutable and is kind of totally in control. That is the myth. The myth is that policeman may have just had a fight with his supervisor, with his wife, or he's been angry at somebody, and he walks in and there's nothing magical that's poured over him to change him. He is what he is coming in. So that emotional state of the responder has a lot to do with the perception that that person is going to bring. Okay. Remember, this is a hot incident now. Someone may have a gun. Someone may have a weapon. So your own emotional state as you walk into the event will have an impact. Are you there physically but not focused? Are you scared? Policemen can be scared. They're humans. Events such as an argument I talked about. So you got to be cool. Can you be cool in a hot incident? We as humans have perception of others which are conscious or unconscious, and this is normal. These perceptions relate to race, poverty, religion, and behavior. These perceptions drive our response to the person in crisis. Okay, Karen. And what do? Well, you introduce yourself. I'm Officer Jones with the Sheriff's Department. Can you tell me your name? It looks like you're really stressed out. Can you tell me what's going on here? You're there because you've been called to help the situation. So the police will describe this, you're going in soft, not hard. You're going in soft to deal with the person, not hard. And that's not what they typically have been taught. They're going in hard to deal with a hard situation. So what do? We reduce the stimuli, try to move the person to a private space, turn off the flashing lights, encourage calming the person, take a deep breath, plan to be present in the situation for an extended period of time. Do not rush. Now that's really, an expectation that borders on the unrealistic because they may have to get back on patrol and they want to get this report written and they want to get back doing what they need to do. So that's a hard order to fill, but it is a skill that has to be developed. So you model as a responder appropriate behavior, your voice, your posture, you initiate the initial contact may worsen. The person is agitated and upset. So you open up channels of communication. Again, this sounds, as George would tell you, very therapeutic. Tell me more about what's going on here. Can you tell me what happened to you in this event? Less authoritative approach, non-threatening. Don't fall into an aggressive trap. Don't create a power struggle. Keep the conversation positive. Thanks for moving over here with me. Minimize factors that cause frustrations. Do not get distracted. Don't become the problem. You can become the problem as a responder if you're too aggressive and you agitate the person you're trying to calm down. Okay? Karen, we'll go to the next one. Okay, yeah. Violence potential. The police are always worried about the violence potential. And there are some basic guidelines here that I'm just going to go over quickly. If you find out that the person has used a weapon before, if the person has had violence toward a pet, those are troublesome signs that need more attention. Command hallucinations, that is, I'm getting instructions from another voice. That gives a quick snapshot of a person's mental status, okay? Karen? Oh boy, this is an important one. And if the officer in Minneapolis had looked at this one slide, I wonder if things would be different in our society right now. You don't put the person, if you have to do a restraint, and you don't want to do a restraint, but if you have to, you maintain the person vertically, not in a face down prone position. It has to be face up if you're on the ground. And you discuss as soon as possible behavior contract. You may sit in a chair, but you cannot hit your wife again. Helpful to review what happened after the restraint ends and discuss with the person why officers determine restraint is necessary. They oftentimes get in restraint, and I would say that even the chokeholds that the legislature has advised can be used, that has to be looked at again. I'm really concerned about that. De-escalation, everybody knows what the word means, but guess what? If you look in the second paragraph, there's a great paradox here. If you move toward a less authoritative approach, less controlling and confrontational, one has more control. So you use your voice and your posture, and you can do a lot of positive things with the agitated person in front of you. This is because the person in crisis feels out of control. And if you're as a responder are in control, there's a little bit of hope that I can get under control by looking at what you're telling me. Okay. How are we doing on time, Chad?
Yeah, we got a couple minutes.
Okay. So this is an important word. Alliance is a temporary partnership. You know, how do we get there? Be aware of the setting, assure personal safety first, and move to a safer place if possible, and allow plenty of personal space means distance. If the person moves toward you, you say you need to take some distance right now. And persons in crisis may not process information. You have to speak slowly and clearly, short phrases, and simple vocabulary, repetition, offer choices or suggest options. Again, the whole scope of this is to de-escalate the situation by your relationship here with this person and try to move to a calmer setting. Do speak in a calm, slow voice. Be patient. You got time on your side as the officer. If you're insulted, don't up the ante with a verbal retort. Don't take insults personally and don't retaliate. Well, think about the police on the riot line a couple of weeks ago in Des Moines. You know that they were being called names. How would you feel if someone was in your face calling you a name, calling you the worst names that you can imagine? Would you want to retort, or would you want to push that person? Well, you can think about that. Agree as long as you can with the person. If you cannot go farther, then agree to disagree. Okay. Go to the next slide. Yeah, well, I think yeah, there you go. Okay. You can, well, that other slide would have said in terms of de-escalating certain little tasks that you can do. I won't go back to it today, but you can look at that. And if you can think about what the person is going through, okay, there it is. De-escalate the person by asking what they think will resolve the problem. Search for options, sort down to 2 if possible. Give a choice to the person, again, if possible. If your approach doesn't work, keep digging for an option. What that means is, can you walk over to the car with me and we can sit down and talk in the car about what's going on here? Thinking about possible solution. And an interviewing strategy. Try to get agreement on a plan of action. Walking to the car, we need to sit in the car to sort through the information you've given me. Review slowly and clearly what the plan will be and what is expected. Getting a small goal accomplished is important. Then you may need to go up to a backup plan. For example, no beds available at the hospital, and that's very, very common. Okay, and the last slide. Can we resolve this informally? Do we need an evaluation or a commitment? And Iowa commitments occur under 229 of the code. And that means any police officer can go to the hospital that has a psychiatric unit or any hospital and ask for an admission. And then the chief medical officer in the code will specifies that that person will come down and determine if the person should be admitted. And the 229 code is presently being reevaluated, and it actually needs a little bit of work. But, this final note was the Ed Thomas bill requiring law enforcement notification. That just means if the person was placed in the hospital involuntarily and had weapons involved, that the police want to know about that when that person is released. That gets back to the Parkersburg murder of the Coach Thomas in Parkersburg, Iowa. Okay, that's a very quick review, and if anyone has questions, happy to try to address them.
Thank you for that very informative talk, Earl. And what I'm looking for is just some in the chat. I got some questions that I'll feed your way if you're okay with that. And I'll also keep my eyes open for people raising their hands. One question has come up here. With the increase in mental health cases, should we transfer some police funding money for community counselors to help people with professional crisis intervention strategies?
I think that has been done in Story County. There is a mobile crisis unit that's at work in Story County, and I think that money is, George, you'll have to correct, but I think that's county-based money, is it not?
That's the district money.
Okay. I think that's something that the police would like. But generally, the police have been very supportive when the mobile crisis team has been available in Polk County for years, and it's been very well received. And I think ideally some of that funding should be increased to expand that concept. Yes.
Any other questions for Earl? I'm looking and I don't see any hands up or, oh, George has a question. I see your hand up, George.
Yeah, Earl, you make a very, very good case for how law enforcement has taken on the frontline work in intervening with people who are mentally ill.
Yes.
And as you have pointed out with your slides, many people in prison should have been in a mental health facility.
Yep.
Where they could get proper care. You're doing some great work in the Law Enforcement Academy, but I'm really concerned about those that are already out in the community as law enforcement,
yes.
Not having this education, this opportunity. Are you moving into the community? Are cities calling on you for help to help them better deal with people who are mentally ill?
We would love to do that, George. We haven't been asked. We have met with the jailers about a year ago, and that was a very helpful meeting. They had a state association meeting, and we were able to get to that. But yeah, we'd like to do just what you're talking about, George.
But it's not being done now.
No. Maybe sporadically. I'm not really. I don't think it's in a curricula that's being instructed right now.
That is really problematic, Earl.
Yes, it is. Indeed it is.
That's where it needs to take place, as well as the Law Enforcement Academy, where the new recruits are just getting started.
Just getting started. Right.
And we have looks like a clarifying comment here maybe from Deb Schildroth, and she says that Story County is one of 11 counties in Central Iowa Community Services Mental Health Region. This region funds many services, including the Mobile Crisis Response Team, as well as the Crisis Stabilization and Transitional Living Center, both located in Ames, Story County. Thank you, Deb.
Way ahead.
Thank you, Deb, for that. Yeah, so I don't see any additional questions, but Earl, that was very helpful. There's a lot going on. Let's see, wait, one more question here. Maybe more than one more question here. Does the local police departments require continuing education type credits that they need to earn in, say, mental health or this particular topic? Are there ongoing continuing education requirements for police officers, Earl?
There are. I don't know the details on that, but they are expected to maintain their license. They have a license that's issued, and that requires some ongoing training.
Yep, and it looks like our own police chief, who is retiring, had participated in a conversation with the NAACP, and he stated that they do provide ongoing professional development in this area for the force. So thank you for clarifying on that as well, Gene. So yeah, with that, we'll go on to a couple of announcements here. Thank you again, Earl. I appreciate that. Thanks, George, for bringing the program to us. I want to pass the mic here for a moment over to Jim Patton, who would like to talk a little bit about our tree watering initiatives over at the Tedesco Center. So go ahead, and Jim.
Okay, thank you, Chad. First of all, you all should know that we planted about 100 trees last year, and we've had great survivability, probably 85–90%. So first of all, that's a good base to start from. And we scheduled the watering last week because we had that long dry spell. And I guess I can be given credit for the rain, but we needed it. And the other thing I wanted to point out is not only are we looking for rain, but we've got this intense heat that's coming. It's been here and we're probably having it coming back. So when we schedule a watering, even if we get rain that day or the day before, we probably will go ahead with it because we can't hardly overwater during the summer. And we really don't want to lose these trees. So we had 4 volunteers on Wednesday. I was the only one that showed up on Thursday, but I had some ability and time to finish watering the water that I had. We emptied the tank. So we probably got 90% of the trees watered. We're going to try to locate the tank in a more central location for those that were there or have been there. It takes some walking, and we encourage people to have golf carts or garden tractors or things that with a narrow wheelbase that we can move around to different locations. And so we'll probably look at the week of the 27th or the week of August 3rd as our next likely opportunities. But again, even if we get a little shower, if we keep getting this intense heat, we're going to need to schedule 1 or 2 more waterings and probably be a week or 2 apart. So be watching for announcements. Really appreciate everybody's help. If you have a half a dozen or 8 people any one time, that's great. That's perfect. And we'll usually schedule a late afternoon and a morning, so whatever works for your schedule. And I realize not everybody is physically able to do that. So you people who can't do it, you need to nudge the Rotarians that are physically able so we can get it done. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, what a great resource that Environmental Learning Center is, and what a wonderful part our club is playing in not only the tree planting, but taking care of those. Thanks for taking the lead on that, Jim. I'll notice that one thing I did notice while I was out at the Learning Center on Wednesday, I saw a pretty decent sized garter snake. So for those of you who might be a little nervous about that, I don't want to overly discourage you, but snakes need water too. And I think with the message that we learn here from Jim is that if he sets a date for us to water, even if it rains, we should just go on out there anyway. Even if we're doing it in the rain, it'll make it cooler. So thank you, Jim, for taking the lead on that. Yeah, I have a quote for a thought for the day, I guess. And before we get to our 4-way test, thinking about our topic today of mental health, I have a quote here from Fred Rogers. Anything that's human is mentionable, and anything that is mentionable can be more manageable. When we can talk about our feelings, they become less overwhelming, less upsetting, and less scary. Again, Fred Rogers. So thank you all for your time today. Next week, it looks like we will have some smaller topic breakout Zoom. So stay tuned for details of how we might break into smaller groups and maybe have more discussion with some certain targeted topics and different presenters. So stay tuned this week. And we'll end the meeting here with our 4-way test. In all that we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? So thank you all today. Have a great day. We'll see you next week.